Yeah, so there you go. And as we were just listening there, just confirmation to me as well from a Labor source, Ben Carroll, deputy. So it seems, Kos, that his nomination for the leadership has worked, that he's put the heat on the left and they've come around, because initially the socialist left had wanted Pallas to be the deputy as well. They've compromised at the 11th hour. So the right in Ben Carroll now have got the deputy leadership, the deputy premiership.
It's a far more stable setup as well. The party probably did need some balance downstairs, as in the lower house. So I think in the long term, it's a good outcome for the incumbent government. It would have been rather unstable if we had a situation where the left continued to hold the two key positions in the lower house.
And it did seem to me when we reported a bit over about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, that the nomination for the leadership just looked, and having seen so many of these leadership moves in the past, with a faction that doesn't have the numbers to say, look, we still want to be listened to here. And by Carroll nominating, it was sort of just almost a show of strength from the right to say we haven't gone entirely, Kos.
Well, I think it's also a sign of, Daniel Andrews has resigned. His ability to control the party, particularly the Labor caucus, was second to none. And I think we are now entering into a new paradigm, and you could see today's a good example of that, where people are prepared to probably say things and do things which they wouldn't have done when Daniel was in charge. So that's the big takeout, in my opinion.
Yeah, so if Daniel Andrews had wanted to have the succession of Jacinta Allan and to have Tim Pallas as deputy as well, to have the left control both those top jobs, that's not how it eventuated in the end. So we were already getting a sense of what the post-Daniel Andrews Victorian Labor Party will look like.
Yeah, definitely. You would see, I think, parts of the right, in particular, the party that will want to have a greater say on what happens in government going forward. And I think it's probably healthier for the incumbent government to actually have that sort of more balanced approach to governing the state, because there are going to be significant challenges that we've discussed on this show many times.
Yeah, indeed. Lots of challenges. One of them, and I want to elaborate on that, is the heartland. Let's talk about that in a second. But just in terms of the politics, and you've been the pollster for many Labor campaigns, you've been involved in many. To start your leadership under threats or under challenge is much more difficult than, say, a smooth succession as we're going to see now for Jacinta Allan.
Yeah, I think in the end she was the single nominee. Obviously, Ben Carroll had withdrawn, but however, it's probably the first time we've had a potential contest or someone nominated for the position of the top job in the Labor Party in Victoria now, I would say, dating back for 20 plus years. So it's been a while. Now, those challenges that they're facing as a government are going to be quite significant. They are versus the Greens in inner parts of Melbourne, and there are versus, I would say, suburban independents and probably the Liberal Party to a lesser extent in the outer suburbs, which used to be their heartland. So there's going to be a few things that need to get their heads around very quickly as a new team.
On the heartland, there was a bit of, I know it was a thumping win to Daniel Andrews last November. There's no getting around that. But you have analysed some of the swings against Labor in what were heartland seats. So any swings that we saw against the Andrews government, there was a big enough buffer for them to accommodate, but they wouldn't want that trend to continue much further, would they, Kos?
Yeah, it's a problem that the Labor Party, I think, in general is facing, and it's not really paying much attention to it. So Fowler, for example, at the federal election, elected independent, that seat was a super safe seat for Labor for many years, highly multicultural, very low income constituencies. And so that fell to an independent that was a well-known independent, Daly, and she obviously had a record in local government in that area. We saw very similar patterns at the state election in Victoria in similar, what I would say, demographic, geographic sort of electorates. So Melbourne's outer western suburbs in particular, where swings that they absorbed were in excess of 20%. And yes, the 2PP was relatively okay in the end. But when you're winning seats with primary votes now in the high 30s and low 40s, it doesn't take much for that next step to occur, and that is really an independent snagging a seat going forward. And there's nothing I am seeing from a research perspective that could suggest that they've actually turned that boat around. I think the situation economically is a lot worse than it was in last November, and we all know there's been upteenth amount of interest rate rises, and that pain will be felt the hardest right in those suburbs.
Very interesting day in Victorian politics, and very interesting in Labor politics to watch the post-Andrews era starting and just 2 hours and 12 minutes away from the end of his premiership. Kos, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Great to get your insights as always.